alright. Am I audible? I guess I am. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. Only twice. Okay, alright. So I have everybody's attention now. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming again today. Not a very, very conducive time to do classes, but the way in which this course is operating, I don't think we have any other choice. All of you have already committed to a certain number of hours, right? So it's about 14 hours which you will sit through in the course. Whether you are attentive for those 14 hours or whether you are not, your time spent will be the same, right? If you come to the class and you're not attentive, it's not that you're going to be able to do anything else. You won't be able to watch a movie, you won't be able to talk to a friend, things like that. So therefore, my advice as a friend, right? Don't think of me as a prof, I'm not even taking any class, is to be as attentive as possible, make this class as participative as possible. And if for doing that, you need to come forward, you can feel free to do that. Don't come because I am saying, come if you think it will help you in participating. We will not be circulating a mic to reach out to each and everyone. Right? This is not an event where we will be able to do that. So if you think it is helpful, come forward. If you think you are okay wherever you are, it's fine. But believe me, after the class every single day, you will not be missing out on anything by participating, but you will miss out on a lot, potentially a lot, if you are not participating. Okay? So with those remarks, let me hand over to Professor Sampadanand Mishra.
So let's begin with a few seconds of silence, like we did yesterday. So that 1 minute, 18 times, breathe in and breathe out. So yesterday I gave you a little introduction to the pedagogical philosophy of Bharat, and also a brief introduction to the Indian knowledge system, where I spoke about the huge amount of texts starting from the Vedas, Upanishads, the Brahmana, Aranyaka, then you have the Vedantas, then you have all the philosophical texts, the tantric texts, the epic and classical texts, and also referred to the huge amount of records which are available in various Indian languages, regional languages. So that forms the whole of the Indian knowledge system. So if there were texts, scientific texts, we did discuss about many scientific texts, the texts pertaining to the realm of physics, chemistry, methodology, architecture, archaeology, various branches of knowledge. So when you write a scientific text or any text, I'll give you certain examples. Now just look at how many verses the Mahabharata has. Any idea? 8 lakh. 100,000 verses, right? And it's not a small text, it's a huge text. If a single poet has to write 100,000 verses, and just imagine what kind of stories, facts, which are given in the Mahabharata itself. So how will a poet structure all the different ideas which are presented in the text? So how would one structure it right from the beginning to the end, and then you have stories within stories, within stories, within stories, so many stories. And you cannot challenge Vyasadeva saying that, okay, he has misplaced this story. A lot of people have done research on this. But so far no one has pointed out that here there is a misplacement, or it doesn't follow, it doesn't have any link, a character is misplaced, an event is misplaced, the slokas are not in order. So how does one follow? So there was a way of writing poetry or presenting the ideas. The same applies to the Ramayana, same applies to various Puranas. How they have drawn the structure, the adhyayas. We didn't call chapters or sections, we called it adhyayas. Various other names were given. But if you contemplate on the word adhyaya itself, so it has a very different meaning than chapters or sections or books. Very different. Sometimes when I come to the language part, I will explain certain words which have a very deeper meaning than the usual meaning. Now, these are narratives, right? Ramayana, Mahabharata, they are called itihasas. Then you have Puranas, lots of stories, true stories, profound truths of the Veda, of the Upanishad, of the ancient texts. Like, it's called the Itihasa and the Purana. They are Veda Upabrahmana. Please remember this word, Veda Upabrahmana means that they are the extension of the Vedic idea, whatever realization. Do you remember yesterday I told you the 4 important realizations which we need to know in order to enter into the Veda. So what are those realizations? The first one was that there is a greater world than the world in which we live. There is a greater truth, there is a greater life. Second realization was that man has to make effort to ascend to those higher worlds of life, truth and bliss. Right? And the third realization was that there is a constant battle between the two forces. And what we need to do for that to get victory over the negative forces, then we have to keep the divine as our comrade. There has to be constant remembrance of the divine. And what was the fourth realization? So there is the truth is one, but it manifests in various forms. So in all the various forms, you have to see, feel the presence of that one truth, that one divinity. So this is very, very central to the Veda. And these central ideas or realizations of the rishis, which one finds in the Veda. So again, it takes a profounder shape in the Upanishads, and then it percolates to the various other shastras, right? So all our darshana shastras also, the schools of philosophy. So they draw the inspiration from the Veda. So that's why we call it Veda Akhila Dharma Moolam or Akhila Jnana Moolam. Now coming to the scientific texts, not just the epic texts or the literature, poetry, drama, and various kinds of poetry, various kinds of plays. There are also like various divisions. And there is no end to the wonders of the way the rishis have created the shastras, right? So when it comes to the scientific texts, say for example, like someone is writing a shastra on medical science, or a shastra on like Arthashastra, Ayurveda, Can you name some of the names of ancient Ayurveda acharyas? Any idea? Charaka, Susruta, Bhagavatka, okay, Dhanvantari. These are the famous names when we come to Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is dealing with the medical science, the health science. There are various divisions. Sanjeevani. Sanjeevani Bhuti. Now I am asking about the acharyas of the Ayurveda. So in that context, we took the names of Charaka, Susruta, Bhagavatka, Dhanvantari, and various other acharyas, and various samhitas which are there in the field of Ayurveda. So, say Shukra Niti or Arthashastra and various other scientific texts. So, what was the process by which the Shastras were written? Was there any technique by which the Shastras were written? Because nowadays we give a lot of stress on research. Then we have to do research. We have to have a research bent of mind, a scientific way of thinking, or a very logical thinking, critical thinking. We give a lot of importance to it. Then, when you come to do your PhD or writing a dissertation or writing a proposal, writing some article, research article, so you have to follow certain norms. Right? Otherwise, it will not be accepted as a research article. So, you have to follow. Like you start with some. How do you start a research article?
Introduction.
No, you give some sensible answer, right? How do you start a research article? All those who have been doing research. So, how do you start it? What will be the first point?
Research question and the rationale.
And why do you
The
do
objective.
research? What is meant by research? We call it research. Why do we need to do research? What is meant by research? Like yesterday we discussed about what is education.
So that we can repeat
You can
the same things again and again.
you can repeat the same thing again and again. That's the purpose of research.
Yes, so that we can find the science and we can repeat.
You can find certain
New knowledge.
new knowledge.
Bridge gaps in the
New
knowledge.
knowledge. You can fill the gaps that you see. So we call it as research, but if you contemplate on the words, how many of you are familiar with what are the Indian words for research? Shod is one word. Then Anusandhana, beautiful. Okay. So another word. Then Parishodha. Okay. Like Shodha, Anusandhana, Parishodha. What are other words? What are the Indian words for research? Have you heard the word Gaveshana? Gaveshana, like you will find a lot of institutes at Gaveshana Sanstha. Right?
How do we
So, Gaveshana.
spell it?
Yeah. I'll write it here. Gaveshana. And you know what does it mean? Gaveshana. So we had words like Shodha, I'm writing in Roman script. Anu, Sandhana. And here is the third word, Gaveshana. Then you have a fourth word. This Anusandhana is Sandhana means like you have to very contemplate it. The root word Sandhana is not just searching, but you have to be deeply contemplated and concentrated on something. And chase it. You have to follow it in a concentrated and contemplated mind. Shodha is to refine. Shodha, parishodha, to refine. Okay. From its on refined state, you bring it to a refined state. Now, this is one of the most important words that we need to understand. What was meant by research to the ancient Indian thinkers or scientists or researchers or the rishis. So, Gaveshana comes from two words, go plus Eshana. Have you heard the word go? Anyone of you? Not English go, like going. The Sanskrit word or any Indian word go.
Guy.
Guy. Cow. So that's the usual meaning cow. Now Eshana means searching. Eshana means searching or desiring to find. Right? So does research mean to search for cows? Will that fit into research? So it means like the word go is not actually cow in this context. Go has various meanings. But let's find out what does go mean in this context. That if you go to the Veda, you will find constantly there is prayer. The rishis pray for having cows. If you translate go as a cow, so you will find that why the rishis are always asking for cows. That's how you have various other narratives that they were, the ancient people were nomads and they were always with their cows, searching for cows and horses and then living near the bank of the rivers and then focusing on agriculture. So a lot of narratives based on this word go and ashwa, right? But they are highly symbolic words. So to the Vedic rishis, the go meant something else. So if you translate go as cow only, you will find problems with many words. How is Tulsidas known? What is the epithet you find before Tulsidas? Like we write doctor or professor. So Tulsidas is Goswami Tulsidas, right? What does Goswami will mean then?
Owner of cows.
Tulsidas. Swami of cows.
Swami is
The
or master.
of many cows, that he had a lot of cows. Will that fit into Tulsidas? We have never heard stories that Tulsidas had a cow. No. Now go has, in addition to cow, go means senses. All our senses. Go means speech. Go means earth. Go means rays of light or light. And whatever light symbolizes. If you are not familiar with all these different meanings a particular word has, then you will miss the point. Right? So Goswami Tulsidas will be like he was master of his senses. He had complete control over his senses because he was master, he had mastery. Or he was master of speech. Or he was the possessor of the rays of light. Light symbolizes truth. Light symbolizes peace, happiness, knowledge, right? Wisdom. So this is how you can interpret the word Goswami. The same way, when you say Go Eshana, Gaveshana, This is an epithet of Indra in the Vedic, Gaveshana. Why Indra was called Gaveshana? Because Indra in the Veda represents the pure mind. The pure mind having access to the pure intellect or coming under the influence of the pure intellect. And that is always in search of the truth of everything. To find out the truth of everything. That is why he was known as Gaveshana. And from that, our ancient seers and sages, when they wanted to have a word for anything connected with research, Anusandhana, so they thought of this word, Gaveshana, that in search of truth, in search of light, the truth of everything. Okay. And there you have another word for research, called Tattvanusandhana. This was the actual word for research, like Gaveshana. Tattva Anusandhana. Tattvanusandhana. Tattva means that means the truth of anything. Like a cow is different from man. So what differentiates the cow from other animals and from man? That cow next is the tattva of the cow. Manushyatva of Manushya, the tattva of Manushya. Okay. So what differentiates one from the other? The essential truth of one's own existence or of one's own being is called the tattva. That is the truth of everything. So that needed to be found out. So it takes many years in order to find out the tattva of oneself or tattva of anything. It's not so easy to understand what is the Manushya-tattva, what is Guru-tattva, what is the tattva of anything, what is the truth of everything. So in search of finding out the truth of everything, and they pursued and continued with their search until the truth was discovered. Why it has to be researched? Because once the truth found, the truth can be stolen, the truth can be hidden, the truth can be covered by many elements. So therefore, a research has to be done in order to find out the truth. And that is very beautifully described in the Veda itself by a legend of Angirasa Rishis. That is the basis of all that we understand by research. So I will narrate that story, and then I will take you through the techniques which were developed later for critical thinking, for debate, for presenting the text. So slowly we will understand those points. This is a little technical session. So I will show it here point by point. We will discuss and I will explain it to you. So what is that legend of Angirasa Rishis? It's very central to what we understand by the research according to the ancient seers and sages. Angirasa Rishis, Angira Rishis, they are the seekers of the truth. Angirasa, because they carry that fire within themselves. They are in search of that light and in search of that truth. The truth seekers were called the Angirasas, the truth seekers. And suddenly, this is how the legend goes in the Veda. Suddenly, the Angirasa Rishis, they found that their cows are stolen. They are not finding their cows. So the legend goes by the name Angirasa Rishis and the lost cows. So they didn't know where to find the cows. So while they are worried about their cows, so suddenly Sarama appears before them. Sarama is a heavenly hound, the heavenly dog, Sarama. And Sarama knows the whereabouts of many things. So the heavenly hound Sarama goes and then he goes and finds out the whereabouts of the cows. So he found, the Sarama found, actually she is Swarga Dhoti Sarama. So she found out that the cows are hidden in a dark cave, and it is hidden by three enemies: Panis, Dasyus and Vrutyas. So Panis and Dasyus and Vrutyas are three enemies in the Vedas. Their job is to steal things and then hide it in the dark cave. Now Sarama comes and informs who? Indra. Why? Because the Angirasa Rishis, they were constantly praying to Indra and offering the Soma Rasa, Soma. So then Indra becomes powerful and then saves their cows. So Sarama comes and informs Indra where the cows are hidden. Now Indra, after getting the Soma from the Angirasa Rishis, becomes very powerful and then goes with it Vajra, kills the Panis, Vrutyas and Dasyu and saves the cows. This is how we'll find very briefly this legend in the Rig Veda. Now this is a highly symbolic story. The story is all about, like you can link it with all that we do in the name of research. Right? And it's also a deep, profound spiritual journey. It happens that how things, the truth is hidden from us. The light is hidden from us. So now, who is this Sarama? Indra, I told you that it represents pure mind under the influence of the pure intellect. Right? That alone has the power to fight against the enemies. But that intellect even fails to find out the whereabouts of the things. So that is where a Sarama is needed. Sarama represents the intuition, about which we are going to have a full class on intuition. So, unless and until there is the intuitive faculty informing the whereabouts of things, it's very difficult to find out where things are hidden. So, intuitively, what one receives, then one has to have if the mind is not pure, if mind is not under the influence of the pure intellect, they will not even understand what is intuitively received. It can be misinterpreted, it can be misguided. That is why Indra is there. So intuition is something which belongs to a higher realm of mind. It is above the higher mind. It is above the illumined mind. It's just below the over mind. If you look at the layers of the mind, so it is below the over mind and above the higher and illuminated mind. From that realm of mind, the intuition, the flashes come. And when someone has that purity, pure mind, pure intellect, only can get the message right and then take action on that. That is why Indra once finds out, once he is informed by Sarama, then he goes to the cave and fights against Panis, Vrutyas and Dasyus. Now, who are these Shatrus, these enemies? They are also part of our human consciousness. Right? Pani is a transactional being. That is why Panam, you say money is called Panam. The business market is called Panya. What is available, the product which is available in the market is called Panya Vastu, coming from the same. Like, so Panyalaya, like this you have got the marketplace. So Pani is a transactional which negotiates with everything. Like we all have this negotiated character. Like you go to the market and how much it is? Per kilo is 50 rupees. No, you take 40 rupees. So we start bargaining. So Pani is that Shatru which always starts bargaining, negotiating and dividing, trying to play all kinds of roles. Vrutra hides everything. Like you have your specs on your, like nose, but still you find out where is my specs. So the Rudras always keep things hidden from us. It happens to every one of us. Okay, on a day-to-day life also you experience. But at a deeper level also they hide the truth from us. The Sioux, they create all kinds of divisions and they actually kill our creative powers. They kill all the beautiful things in our consciousness. So these are the Shatrus who take all the beautiful things, all the riches. In the Veda they are known as the Rai. Rai means all the spiritual wealth. So like light, truth, bliss, knowledge, wisdom, these are the Rai, the spiritual wealth. So they are stolen by these three enemies. One is the Sioux and the Rudras. They hide it in a dark cave, in the cave of inconscience. Okay. So from where things have to be brought. So that is what is the symbol behind the story of Angiras Rishis, their lost cow and how it was recovered. Now Angiras Rishis, as I told you, they are the seekers of the truth. So every one of us who are in the realm of knowledge or who are evolving and we are following the path of our evolutionary journey, we are seekers on the path. Seekers of what? Seekers of light, truth, bliss, what is known as the right, the spiritual wealth. So unless and until those are recovered and discovered and manifest in our consciousness, so we cannot attain to what we discussed yesterday, the perfection, the Purnata, right? So Angiras Rishis are seekers of truth. So while pursuing the truth, seeking after the truth, trying to find out the truth of everything, so there we always take the help of Indra. Indra is representing the pure mind. That means like we need to sharpen our mind, refine our mind, elevate it to the higher realms, link it with the pure intellect, allow it to come under the influence of pure intellect. Then only we are in a position to find out the truth of everything, find out the tattva. So this is what is called the tattva anusandhana. Tattva anusandhana. So this was the idea behind when our ancient seers and sages, they wanted to do the tattva anusandhana. And once the truth is discovered, how it has to be presented without distortion, without misrepresenting the truth. That is also very, very harmful because you know what is the truth, but you are presenting it in a different way. That is how they created, like how do you validate that this is the truth? This technique of validating that, okay, I can say that, okay, I have found out the truth. So I have to validate it. Like, how did you find it out? How do I know that this is the truth? I may be, like mistaken, misunderstood, misled. So there are techniques which they could find out at the same time, not just the truth, not just the realizations of the rishis. That is why when you turn to the Upanishads, you will find the realizations of the rishis. But at the same time, the rishi also explains how did he arrive at this? How did he find the realization or arrived at this state of realization where he could very confidently say that, okay, this is the truth, I have got it, I found it. Like we contemplate on the story of Satyakam, for example. Step by step, the truth was revealed to him. So there are many in the Upanishads, you will find more than 32 vidyas, 32 different realizations, and when they are describing the vidyas, the realizations, there is also the description how that vidya was discovered. So Upanishads themselves are manuals of sadhana or the manuals of siddhi. Like it explains like how one is discovering that. Okay. So that was in the context of finding out the higher truths, the higher knowledge, the higher wisdom. But then when it comes down to the different realms of knowledge, the scientific knowledge, the presentation style also, like if someone wanted to write a poem. So in our tradition, you will not just find poetry or plays or novels just written in. then you will find the science of it. So you will find poetics, which deals with every aspect of poetry. That also forms this well-researched, like unless and until one has found out the truth of everything, one will not be in a position to create a text like this poetry. So the different aspects of the poetry, how does a poet create poetry, or how does one appreciate it, how one should appreciate it, how does one understand the poetry, what are the different parts of the poetry. And there is also a text, something like called Kavi Shiksha. Kavi Shiksha means a Kavi is trained, someone is trained to become a Kavi. So someone is trained to understand the different aspects of the poetry. You need to understand the alankaras, you need to understand the rasas, you need to understand the various aspects, the gunas, the doshas, the qualities, the blemishes. Everything one has to understand in order to appreciate and understand the poetry. So you have, on one side, you have something like in the form of poetry or sutra or bhash. On the other side, you have the grammar of it. Like you have a language, you have the grammar of it. You have like metrical patterns. The poetry, infinite patterns you will find. Okay. But the poets have used minimum number of metrical patterns. Say for example, what do I mean by metrical patterns? Suppose you say, Tvameva Mata Achapita Tvameva. So it's, like it's in a rhetoric pattern. Suppose I say, Ya Gundendu Tusharahara Dhavala. So it's in another pattern. So these are the different patterns in which the poetry is written. And one needs to understand this, and there is a whole science of the metrics, the prosody. Yesterday I mentioned about it, like how Pingalacharya has given us the metrics, the chandas, which have a deeper link with, say, Fibonacci pattern, the Pascal triangle, and the 0-1 algorithm based on which the computation happens. So the chanda, there is a deep science. They also explain the grammar of it. So with every shastra, the grammar of it is explained. So poetry. Suppose you have plays, then you have dramatics, dramaturgy. So the shastra explains the grammar of it, like who is an actor, how do you become a good actor, so how an actor has to be trained, so how a hero has to be presented, what should be his quality, how a naika or heroine has to be presented, what should be her qualities. So various types of things which are in a very methodical way, they are presented in the shastras. The point is that this is how they wanted to find out the truth of everything. As I said, the difference again between the different shastras that is available in the modern times and the ancient times. Here you find that every shastra, as I mentioned yesterday, every shastra here is a moksha shastra. Even Panini giving you a highly technical text like Guide, ultimately you will find a deeper philosophy here, and it is ultimately leading towards the liberation from our limitations, liberation from the lower level to the higher level. So that's why it's called Moksha Shastra. So even like you go to Chanakya's Niti Sutras, okay, Chanakya, ultimately it is also a Moksha Shastra. You go to text from architecture, it begins with Mangalacharana. It begins by invoking the divine for the presentation of it without an obstacle. It ends with by offering the text. Ultimately, every shastra here becomes a moksha shastra because it is always linked with the core essence of our civilization, that is the divinity. Okay. So this is how you find right from the Vedas till then, even the profound realization of the Brahman is also presented in a very moksha. So that's why if this question comes, like, who is this Brahman? Who am I? Why am I suffering? What is Ananda? The kind of questions that you see, that itself explains what kind of mind, what kind of seeking the ancient seers and sages have. So I have made a compilation of more than 350 questions which were asked by the ancient Upanishadic rishis. And the entire gamut of Upanishads that you have, they are answers to this 350 question. Amazing question. What happens after death? What happens to my body? What happens to my mind? What happens to my prana? What happens to my soul? So the answers, and these were the questions and they were seeking answer to it. That when I eat food, who is actually eating? When I am seeing, who is seeing? When I am hearing, who is hearing? Deep scientific questions they kept asking and trying to find answers to it. If the questions were so deep and they were trying to find answers also, there will be the way of finding out also will be that deep, profound and critical and methodical. So that's how they could find out and validate that okay, this is what is the knowledge. When Satyakama, a character in the Upanishad, so there are many things which are revealed to him. When he comes before his Guru, so he feels that okay, I have received the knowledge. The Guru also feels that he is filled in with that knowledge. He has received that knowledge. So it is received means like how do we validate? Like one of the validations was that the entire being gets filled in with the Ananda. One becomes vibrant. One becomes very luminous with that. So that proves that the person has, have attained to that stage where the realization has taken place. That's why when Haridramata Gautama, who was the teacher of Satyakama, so when he finds Satyakama returning, he finds that he sees that Satyakama, he was shining with that knowledge of Brahman. Where have you learned it? Then he describes how he learned the whole process. And this process, again you link it with the pedagogy. What was the means for Satyakama for attaining to this knowledge? It was very different from how Shvetaketu understood from his father Udalaka. How Udalaka learned about the deeper truths of many other questions, many aspects of the truth. From King Pravamana, the methodology was different. So there was no, like yesterday we discussed about this one size fits all model, that every classroom should have, like we have one methodology, one kind of tool, like everyone has to pass through this or understand this. No. So in ancient time, the Gurukulas, like students, depending upon their aspiration, intensity in their aspiration, purity in their aspiration, what they want to learn, depending upon their svabhava, swadharma, the consciousness, the level of consciousness, the teacher employs different methods. Like when Satyakama came and got the initiation from Haridramata Gautama, he was not taken to the classroom. What was he saying? If you know the story, so he was saying, so Haridramata Gautama saying that, look, now I am initiating you. Then he said, what is my work? No, I have got 300, 400 lean cows. Take them to the forest. So Satyakama said, okay, I will take them to the forest and I will come back when they become 1,000. That is how he learned. When Shvetaketu returned from his Gurukula, after 12 years of education, he thought, and he was one of the brightest students in the Gurukula. So everyone was talking, Shvetaketu. So Udalaka said that, okay, let me see why people are saying Shvetaketu. What has he learned? Where has he reached? When Shvetaketu was coming, Udalaka was peeping through the window. He was observing how he was walking, how he was behaving with people, what he was thinking, what was his state of consciousness. So, finding him in a different state, Udalaka thought this fellow has not learned anything. And people are saying he is the brightest student. I don't see anything in his character. Rather, he has become very arrogant. So when he comes, he bows down to his father Udalaka. So Udalaka asks him 3 questions. Now just look at how the questions are being framed in order to give the education or trigger something, trigger more curiosity in the student. And the methodology which he employed for teaching Shweta was very different from the methodology which was employed by other rishis for their students. So what did Uddalaka ask? It's important to know these three questions. Uddalaka asked his child Shweta, he said, what have you learned? He said, ask him anything under the sun, anything under the sky. I have all the shastras at the tip of my tongue. He said, very good. But do you know that knowing which the unseen can be seen, the unheard can be heard, the unthinkable can be thought of. Yena adrushtam drishtam bhavati, ashrutam shrutam bhavati, amatam matam. And Shweta had no answer to this. He said, no problem. My gurus didn't teach me this. I don't know any answer. And since you have asked me, you must be having the answer to the question. So then teach me. He fell down again at the feet of his father, accepting him as his, again, the guru, and then asked him to teach me. So I'll just give it a long story, and you can go through the Upanishad, it takes in Chandogya Upanishad, so where you can find out the teaching learning method from the story of Shweta. So the first experiment or experimental knowledge, that the way he taught his child Shweta. So he said, Shweta, to do one thing, like we have a banyan tree on our courtyard, so go and fetch one banyan fruit. How big is the banyan fruit? Have you seen banyan tree? Banyan tree you all have seen?
Yes.
Right? Have you seen the fruit of it? It's very small, tiny fruit. Okay. So he goes and then fetches one tiny banyan fruit. So Uddalaka says, okay, now break it. So he broke it. He says, what do you find inside? He said, I find so many tiny seeds inside. Okay, fetch one seed. So he brings one seed. He said, break it. So he broke it. What do you see inside? I see nothing. It's just the same. Like the whole of the seed, and when I break it, it is so tiny that you cannot really see something inside. It's the same thing. I don't find it nothing. Then Uddalaka said, like what you say nothing, from that nothing, this whole huge banyan tree has come. That means the whole banyan tree is potentially there within the seed. And then he said, Tat Tvamasi, thou art that. So you are also potentially that. What you become is already there within. That is why when we were discussing yesterday the definition of education, what Swami Vivekananda said? That education is the manifestation of the perfection which already lies within. If it is not there within, it can never manifest. So he said Tattvamasi. Like this, he gives him so many examples. So that is why in teaching and learning, in true teaching, so it is not by instruction, but by examples, drashtana. Not by instruction, by awakening, prabodhana. Okay. So by example, by awakening, that one teaches. So that is how you will find great rishis. Their ways of teaching were very, very different. Again, if you go to when Uddalaka himself, who himself was an established rishi, but at the same time, this is so Uddalaka, who himself was a great rishi, again goes to a king Pravahan. Why he goes? Because Pravahan asked 5 questions to his son Shwetaketu, for which Shwetaketu had no answer. Then Shwetaketu got very disappointed. He said that I learned from the Gurukulas and I learned from my father, but still I am not able to answer the questions. Where knowledge has no end. You don't know from which corner what kind of question will come. But we still think that, oh, I know it. Right? That bhava comes that I know everything. Who is greater than me? Right? So, Shwetaketu was very embarrassed. He comes back and then asks his father, Udalaka, says that, look, you taught me so many things. In spite of that, I am unable to answer to a single question of Pravahan. So Udalaka says, believe me, my dear child, I also have no answer to this question because I don't know. This is a very different vidya. So he said, let's go together and learn from Pravahan. Shwetaketu refused. He said, enough of learning. I don't know. Udalaka goes and then Pravahan, the king, knowing that Udalaka is a great rishi, he can understand so many things. Still he tells him that if you need to learn this, you have to wait 1 year in my court. I'll make all arrangements. But after 1 year, if I find that you deserve this knowledge, I will transfer it. So for 1 year, he had to wait with patience. Then one day, he reveals that knowledge. I'm telling this story because seeking after the truth, the anusandhan, the tattvanusandhan, which was at the base of everything, the all knowledge system, all realization, whatever our rishis have created. So this is how it happened. So now while Udalaka was in Pravahan's school, 6 young seekers, they come to him, knowing that Udalaka knows Vaishwanara Vidya. There's another Vidya, Vaishwanara Vidya. So they wanted to learn about it. Someone told them that Udalaka has that knowledge. Now when they come to Udalaka, so what did Udalaka say? That look, my dear children, young minds, I'm very happy that you all have come all the way to learn Vaishwanara Vidya from me. I don't want to disappoint you, but believe me, I know the Vaishwanara Vidya, but I don't have the confidence of teaching it to others. But I know so and so, who is a confident teacher. He has greater knowledge than me. Look at the humility of a teacher. Teacher like Udalaka. I know so and so who is confident of teaching. Let's all go together. I also want to join with you and learn with you like a disciple from that so that I can gain confidence. If you look at the teaching learning pattern, the different ways how the learning happened, the different ways how teaching happened, how the knowledge creation happened, what were the methodologies, it's amazing. This is what, if we do not know, then we are missing the point and we are just carried away by the modern way of thinking, the modern way of doing research, and we are missing that swatva, that swa aspect, our own way of thinking. That's why I put this question yesterday. The question which is being asked, is there an Indian way of thinking, Indian way of doing science? There's a beautiful article written by one A. Ramanujan. So you can find it on the internet. Is there an Indian way of doing science? Indian way of thinking. So there you will understand like what is that Indian way. Now coming to the creation of various shastras, what was the methodology which was followed? When they wanted to validate something, how the debate happened. Like when two people argued, there was a science involved in it, there was a methodology involved in it. There was, it's not just that the argument started. Look, when Shankaracharya, you know the famous dialogue between Shankaracharya and What was the name?
Bharti.
Mandana Mishra. Okay. So later it became so Mandana Mishra. So when this debate happened, so there is a long tradition of Vada Parampara. Okay. In the Gita, Krishna says when he is describing the vibhutis, the special manifestations, he says, Vada pravadatam aham. So among all the debaters or the debating ways, I am the Vada. What is this Vada? Vada means, like you must have heard words like Vada, Vivada, Samvada, Pravada, Apavada. There's so many words with Vada. Okay. So Vada Samvada, Vada Vivada. Like Vivada, if it becomes like, I'm not in agreement with you, you are not in agreement with me. So there is a Vivada, there is a Kala, there is a quarrel which happens. So the Vada was considered to be highest, not highest, but at least greater person, right? So connected with Vada, there were two other words, Vitanda and the Jalpa. This is what is you will find in the Vada Parampara. What is Vitanda? In Vitanda, when the two opponents, they come together, they don't have any agenda. They just want to destroy each other. But they have no agenda. They don't know why they are fighting. Right? So most of the TV shows nowadays you will find it's just Vitanda. There's no basis of the argument. Like where to start, what they want to prove by that. Let's just fight. Jalpa is a better version of that. There is some agenda to be achieved, but both the opponents, so their mindset is what? Like you are wrong, I am right. You are wrong, I am right. So each one tries to prove himself or herself as right. So that is the Jalpa. Then in the Vada, what happens? There is an issue. Both the parties are conscious of the issue. They want, each one contributes positively towards bringing a solution to the issue. They are building. By following all kinds of means, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, Pratipaksha, Purvapaksha, Uttarapaksha, Siddhanta. So the Vada happens because there is an issue which needs to be solved. It's not me or you, it's the issue which needs to be solved. That's what is Vada. And when this Vada is internalized and is about the higher realms of knowledge, then it becomes a Samvada. Like what took place between Krishna and Arjuna is a Samvada. All the Upanishads are Samvada, in Samvada form. So every Upanishad that you find, whether Isha Upanishad, King Upanishad, Kata Upanishad, Mandukya Upanishad, Mundaka Upanishad, Shweta Shweta Upanishad, Brihadaranyaka, Chandogya, Taittiriya, all the Upanishads are in the Samvada. So you find that the disciple is raising questions and you have answers from the group. So you have in the Vada Parampara that how do you validate a question, whether it is an issue or not, but that needs to be validated. Then how we are going to find an answer to the issue, how the debate has to take place. Then how the scientific texts have to be presented. So this is where you will find a bunch of principles known as, or techniques known as Tantra Yukti. So these techniques are known as Tantra Yukti. So we will learn a little bit about the Tantra Yuktis. So there are plenty, but I will just give you some examples and the various philosophical texts, medical texts, like Charak, Sushruta, Bhagavata, in the different Ayurveda texts, in Arthashastra. Okay, so you will find this Tantra Yuktis because the Acharya is explaining like how he is going to present the Shastra. If you want to understand the Shastra, you should not misunderstand it, or you should not misinterpret it. It should not mislead, or you should not be misled. So that is why these principles have to be kept in mind, because these are the principles which we have followed in presenting the Shastra. Okay. So now you see the core principle, the logical foundation, the composition in Sanskrit. Every composition in Sanskrit, it follows a logic. I mentioned about it, like how with every composition there is a text, there is another text, the grammar of it is explained, like the why of it is explained, the how of it is explained. Okay. Now what is the result then? The development of systematic devices for text presentation. So there is two key frameworks, that you have the Nyaya Shastra and you have the Mimamsakas. So the Nyaya Shastra, it establishes a thesis by 5 steps. What are those 5 steps? We will learn. The Mimamsakas, they are 2 more steps. So there is 7 principles given by the Mimamsakas, and they ensure clarity, rigor, and systematic development of ideas. So the 5-step logical process for proving a hypothesis. So what are these 5-step principles? Like you have a pratigna, that there is a hypothesis which needs to be proved. That we need to keep in mind, and that part is called the pratigna. Next is the hetu. Hetu means like the rationale you have to show, that why this is a hypothesis. The causal element or the reason that you have to put the rationale, like when you are presenting a paper or you are writing a proposal, so you have to have the rationale, like why. What is the rationale behind this proposal or this idea that you are going to present? Then you have the udahara, like the case studies, the example, the data available, supporting your hypothesis. So without that you cannot have. Like you have more case studies, more examples, more data available to validate that. Then you have to validate the data also. That process is also given, that how do you validate the data. So that is what is called the udahara. But believe me, because of our alienation with our own language, we are not even familiar with these words. We are familiar with case study, but we are not familiar with the word udahara. Right? We are familiar with the word rationale, we are not familiar with the word hetu. We are familiar with like hypotheses or proving the hypothesis, we are not familiar with the word pratigna. If we are familiar also, the pratigna means something else, like a promise, like a Vishma pratigna. But the same word will mean something different in a different shastra. So for example, like if you were studying Ayurveda, so first you have to familiarize yourself with the technical terms in the Ayurveda. If you are not familiar with it, then you will. So for example, like in one place, it says like if you have this disease, you eat brahmani. So it's written brahmani bhava. So how will you translate it if you do not understand brahmani? What do you get the sense by brahmani?
Female saint made up.
A female brahmin, a brahmin's wife.
Yes.
So it means like you go kill a brahmin's wife and then eat it for getting rid of that. So that will be disastrous. So the word brahmani has a very different, it refers to a particular medicinal component, okay, a herb or some medicine. So that one needs to understand like what are the words different. Say for example like the word guna. The guna will mean something different in general, like you say,
Virtue.
Virtue. Okay. So that guna will have a very different meaning when you come to the Sankhya. The Sattva guna, Tamo guna, Rajo guna, you will have a different meaning. When you come to Pani, guna will have a very different meaning. Like, for example, the E becoming A in certain cases, okay, is called the guna. So A is the guna of E, like that. So the connection between E and A, this transformation is called the guna. Like of becoming or some short vowel becoming long is called the vriddhi. So guna vriddhi, it has a very different meaning. So for every Shastra, you have a whole bunch of technical terms which need to be understood. So without understanding the technical term, it's very difficult to have entry into the Shastra and understand it fully. So like this, that is why like the point that I want to make here, and everyone is becoming aware of this. That's why you have a Bhasha Samiti, you have a technical term which are being translated into Indian languages, because in our own language we have lost these words and we have lost the nuances of these words. So English provides a very different. We are familiar with those words. That's why you can say that, okay, I translate hetu as a rational. That way, why do we need to know hetu? But hetu is not just the rational. So if you go to the presentation of the Shastra or the hetu, so it's very deep. Just for convenience and simple understanding, we are using the translations. But they are not explaining everything about the hetu. Okay. So that can be like if you go to a Nyaya Vidwan and ask him to explain hetu, so he will take a 1 hour session only on hetu, only on a particular word. So there are so many things which we need to learn. Because of our unfamiliarity with the Shastra, the Shastric way of learning, so it becomes difficult for us to understand. Even the teacher finds it difficult to explain these words in a class because there is no background. So you have to start from the scratch, right? From the beginning. So you have Pratignya, Hetu, Udaharana, Upanaya. Upanaya is the verification, the experimentation, experiment that you do, the correlation that you establish. So that is Upanaya. Then you have Nigamana, the conclusion of that. So these are the 5 steps of presenting a text is given in the Nyaya Shastra, right? Then we go to the Mimamsakas. The Mimamsakas provide 7 different principles for framing a problem. So what are these 7 principles in presenting the problem or in framing the problem within a structured frame? So first is Upakram, like you introduce the problem. So what is the problem? I'll tell you, like very recently I was giving a talk on like how the samvadas that we find, the different dialogues that we find in the Puranas, in the Itihasas, they have a therapeutic value. So on that, I was researching into certain samvadas in Yoga Vasishtha, a text of great significance in the Vedanta. So then while I was going through the text in Yoga Vasishtha, especially keeping in mind the samvada between Rama and Vasishtha, I was amazed to see like how the structuring of the text has been done. Like, so now what's the problem? That you will find that it starts with the problem. The problem is that Rama, after he has gone out and then seen many pilgrimages, he comes back and then becomes silent. Like what happened to Buddha? He went, he saw the 4 things and then became silent. The same thing happening to Rama. He comes and then becomes silent. He doesn't speak. Dasarath is worried. Everyone is worried. So all the rishis are involved. So there is a whole assembly happening, like what happened to Rama? What is the solution? Right? Then the rishis say, like one of the rishis said, like let's call Rama to this assembly. Let him express why is he silent. Is there any problem? Is there a way that we can help? Now Rama comes to the scene, and this dialogue is going to happen between Vasishtha and Rama. Rama places a number of problems. The problem statement, like here is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem. And all these problems I am contemplating to find out the solution, but I am not finding the solution. So you have all the problem statements. Like if I have like what we do like to invite interns, so we send a statement of problems or statement of problems. So the students read that, oh, they know that, okay, these are the problems in this area, okay, this fascinates me. I would like to take up this topic and then find a solution to it. So you find a statement of problem right in the beginning of the text, and then Vasishtha one by one answering to it. So there is a structure in the Shastra itself. You read it carefully, you will be amazed to see how critically, how scientifically, how methodically the presentation of the text have happened so many years before. And we say that, oh, what research the ancients did. Let me tell you one more thing. Yesterday we discussed about the Rig Veda having 10,500 mantras. So yesterday also, like I mentioned, who compiled all these Veda mantras?
The rishis.
Who compiled?
Rishis.
Which rishi? Veda Vyasa. That is why he is known as Veda Vyasa. Vyasa means a compiler. Okay, Veda Vyasa. So through Veda Vyasa, just imagine whatever his age may be, whichever age, like he was living. So, say 5,000 years before, it's not less than that, but 10,000 years before, there was Vyasa Deva. So he was trying to organize the mantras available to him in a scattered manner. How does one understand? These Veda mantras are not organized recently. So many thousands of years before the Veda mantras are organized. We talk about number systems, numbering. Okay, number system in our research. Like I put chapter 3, section 1, subsection 1, 3, 1, 1. Okay, this is what you do in the research presentation. And we say that where from the West has given us a very beautiful numbering system. So that's how we can structure. But today, what was done say 5,000-10,000 years before, if in the context of Rig Veda, if you say 1, 3, 53, you can immediately find out the first book, third hymn, and 53rd mantra. You can immediately find out whether you know that. 10,500 mantras were organized by looking at the rishis who have, to whom these mantras were revealed, topic-wise, rishi-wise, and so many things are taken into consideration, and he has put it all the 10,500 mantras, divided them into 10 books, each book having number of hymns, each hymn having number of mantras. Okay. So many thousands of years before, we have been given this in a very clear language. Today you call us like 10, 53, 20, so immediately someone will find out from the text, this is what is the mantra. So how did Vyasa Deva, what triggered him, what inspired him, what kind of thought process was there in compiling these 10,500 mantras and their intact till date? It continues, a long tradition. It continues with the same thing. The way people were using it 10,000 years before, now also we are using it in the same way. There's no change. Such a system he has created. So like this you will find the presentation of the Shastras, very methodical presentation of the Shastras. So here the Mimamsakas providing you the principles for framing of program, the 7 principles. First is the Upakrama. You introduce the program. Then Upasamhara is stating the hypothesis. Abhyasa is a general outline supporting the hypothesis. Then you have Apurvata, the novelty. What is the novelty? What is the newness of your subject? Like you would say that, okay, this research was not done before by anyone. This is a new thing that I am going to present. The novelty, the originality of the research you need to do. That's what was called Apurvata. Then Phala, what is the outcome of it? What is the outcome of it? So, highlighting the result-orientedness of the benefit of it. Then Arthava, the arguments, observations, including refutation of other views. Like suppose, like you are presenting the thing, but there is already another view available to you. So you have to refute it in order to prove yourself as the right. Then Upapatti. Then you have to establish the final truth, the Siddhanta. You have to say, okay, this is what is the final conclusion of mine. Like you have a pre-submission of your thesis and the final submission of your thesis. Right? So these are the 7 principles of Mimamsakas. In addition to that, what we have here, I'm introducing the Tantra Yuktis. These are specific principles, and there are plenty of such principles which are found in the Arthashastra, which are found in the Charaka Samhita, in the Sushruta Samhita, specific techniques like how the Shastras were being written. So now, what are they? These are the conventional techniques or devices for writing scientific texts in Sanskrit. So where they're found in major ancient texts like Arthashastra, Sushruta Samhita, Charaka Samhita, Ashtanga Hridaya of Bhagavata. You have it in Vishnu Dharmottara Purana. You have it in, like there is a specific text called Tantra Yukti Vichara, specifically dealing with these techniques. Okay. And what is the function? What is the use of this? So these are the methodological tools for the authors, for the presenters, for the Shastra Kalas. So the purposes of why use the Tantra Yuktis? The Tantra Yuktis are employed to, so the points are to express topics that cannot be stated explicitly. This is why you need Tantra Yukti, right? So suggest ways to reconcile apparent contradictions. When you have apparent contradictions, so how are you going to present? How are you going to prove? Then express certain topics tangentially, leaving interpretation to the reader. That's also like another purpose of Tantra Yukti. Use peculiar or specific phraseology, right? That's another purpose. Refute incorrect arguments, another purpose. Conceal meaning intentionally for deeper exploration. So that was also a technique which was employed to dive deep and then think about it, contemplate it, ponder over it, like what can we do. So for further exploration, like finally you see like what is the scope of your research? Like it creates further scope for research, right? So if you cannot prove that, then it is not a good research. You cannot say that it's the end of it. Okay. There are so many things which were also intentionally hidden, okay, concealed for further deeper exploration. Illuminate the secrets of scientific subjects. Then provide structure from a theoretical perspective. So these were the purposes of Tantra Yukti. Then you have some of these examples that you can see. There are plenty. I have in 2 slides, I put in part 1 and part 2, some of the examples of Tantra Yukti texts which are found in the texts which were referred to, like Arthashastra and other things. So you have Adhikarana, one Tantra Yukti, one thing. What is it? Topic. So defines the subject. Doubt, prima facie belief, refutation, and conclusion. So when you find all these things, that part is called the Adhikarana. That's how you define your subject. Then you have Apadesha, which is reason. You advance the reason, explicit or implicit, showing causality. So that's what is Apadesha. Then you have Apavarga, which is also known as Apavada, exceptions, noting exceptions to general rules. There may be certain general rules, but there are exceptions. Like suppose you go to Panini. Now, if you just take as an example only Panini's Ashtadhyaya, you will be amazed. Like, how did he write this? How did he create this text? That you have approximately 4,000 sentences per sutras. Not a single letter you can replace here and there, and not a single letter is misplaced. Single letter, forget about a word or sentence. What kind of technique he employed? If you just contemplate on the techniques which Panini has employed. Say for example, Panini begins with what is known as Pratyahara Sutra. Pratyahara Sutra, like in the beginning of Ashtadhyaya, you have got 14 sutras called Maheshwara Sutras. Maheshwara Sutras. It's believed that Panini was a dumb student and he was very much humiliated in the class. So he was advised to go and then contemplate, do tapasya. So he went, he did tapasya, and as a culmination of his tapasya, Shiva appeared before him, and he played his damaru, and from damaru 14 sounds emerged, and those 14 sounds became the basis of his grantha, his Ashtadhyayi. These Maheshwara Sutras are known as the Pratyahara Sutras, or the Maheshwara Sutras coming from the damaru of Shiva. So I Om, Ruk, A Om, I Oms, Ayavara, Learn, Yamam Vananam, Jabai, Ghadadas, Jabavadadas, Kapachata, Kapai, Shashasha, Hal. So these are the 14 sutras. Now, you know in the alphabet you have got the vowels and consonants, right? So you have A, E, O, U, R, A, I, O, A. So you have got the 13 vowel sounds. Then you have the consonantal sounds. Now in Panini, like vowel sounds are known as swara, consonants are known as vyanjana. Now in Panini, suppose you take any sutra, say for example, there is a sutra, Iko Yanachi. Iko Yanachi. This is a sutra in Panini. And if you want to understand what is Iko Yanachi, so you need a little bit of explanation. I will show you this because you will understand it, what is the technique employed by Panini in composing his Shastra, his Grantha, Ashtadhyayi. Now, Iko Yanachi. Now, if I have to put it, because this is in a sutra form, so I have to again have the right word. This is actually Ikka. This H becomes O because of Ya. Then Ya remains same, Achi remains same. This is, like if you have little familiarity with the syntax, Ikka means, like this is a sixth case. So Panini says, like if you are using a word in sixth case, understand that in the place of, that sense you have to derive. So initially he explains. Whenever you find anything in Panini's Ashtadhyayi is in sixth case, it means in the place of. So in the place of what? In the place of Ik. What is Ik? We will come later. And whatever is in the first case, so here in the sutra the first case is Yam. So that is what is going to become. So in the place of Yam takes place, Yam happens. Okay. So in the place of you have Yam. This is Achi, which is in seventh case. So Panini says, like, if you find anything in my sutra in the seventh case, understand that in this condition, in the condition of, okay. So in the condition of Ach, in the condition of Ach, in the place of Ik, you have Yan. This is how you need to understand. But then you have to understand what is Ik, what is Yan, what is Ach. I don't have a slide to explain you, but very briefly I will tell you. In Panini, you will find this A, E, U, R, R, A, O, I, out. Let's concentrate. So he says A, E, U, R, R, A, O, I, O. This has all the vowel sounds, right? Now when Panini says ik, where is e? This is e. Right? Where is ka? Here. Ka. So in between which other sounds are coming? E, u, r, r. Now I am writing here. Just see the logic here, how he has presented. E, u, r, r. By ik means e, u, r, r. By yan means what happens? After this you have ha, ya, va, ra, ayavara, and nan. Okay, ayavara, nan. Now, yan is ya combined with the last sound na. So when you say yan, Panini says it means ya, va, ra, la. Right? Now you write here ya, va, ra, la. So then och is what? You see a here and cha here. That means all the vowels are represented by och. Panini will not use the word swara. He will use only och. Och means all the vowels. Right? In Panini's Maheshwara Sutra, hal is the last sutra. If you combine it with a and then say all, it means all the sounds. Okay, all means all the sounds. Okay. So now what happens? He says in the place of ik, in the place of e, ya will take place. In the place of u, va will take place. In the place of ru, ra will take place. In the place of ru, la will take place. When? In the condition if there is och, if there is any vowel at the end. So now what happens? Suppose I say dadhi. Now here you have e, right? Then plus anaya. So after e, you have a vowel a, right? After e, you have the vowel a. So how will I pronounce it? What form it will take place? Should I say dadhi, anaya, or something else? So you say that in the place of I, you have here. So now you put here, you remove everything and then put. So what will be the final result? Dadhyanaya. Dadhi, anaya will become dadhyanaya. So how do I arrive at final expense in this line? So there is so much of data which is encoded here in these three words, coherence. So that's the technique which Panini has employed in presenting. It's highly technical, so precise that just by Panini's grammar, which is the biggest grammar book in the world. Just imagine how many volumes it will be. It's just a pocket book. You can carry in your pocket. Smallest grammar book it is. You need just 20 A4 size sheets to print Panini Shastra. And through these sutras, you can generate millions and millions of roots. From the approximately 2000 root sounds Panini has given, you can produce 300 millions of words. It's a generative grammar. And the technique which he has employed in composing Ashtadhyayi is amazing. It's just like a coding language, just like a software program. Flawless. Flawless. How did he do that? If you dig deep into like what was the thought process, how did he create it? What technique he employed it? So much research has gone into it that you can go to the internet and find out the techniques employed by Panini. Amazing. Okay. So the same way you will find there also, like you will find general rules, exceptional rules. There will be then what happens? Like when two rules are being employed, two contrasting rules are being employed for one verb. So which one will you choose? This or that or both? So he has to say like you cannot choose both. You have to choose this. If you have to choose this, then there will be a series of problems. If you choose both, there will be a series of problems. So ultimately you have to use this. That also he explains. Okay. So it's an amazing just to study the technique that Panini has employed in creative Ashtanga. So it shows that so many thousands of years before, our ancient seers, thinkers, scientists, the rishis, knew about the proper way of presenting the shastras, which was very, very methodical, very systematic, in a scientific manner. They had this scientific bent of mind, scientific approach in presenting the past. That's why questioning them becomes difficult. So one has to understand these techniques, then one can appreciate their text. Okay. So apavarga, like exceptions. Then you have arthapatti, a presumption, deriving implied meaning from context or contradiction. Right? Context becomes a very, very important principle in understanding many aspects of the Shastra. Without context, that's why we say that ours is a tradition, not much of textual tradition. Yes, of course, we have the textual tradition, but it is more within the text itself, it is more contextual. If you remove context, you cannot understand the text. Okay. So that's why the contextual meanings also like one has to become aware of. That's why one needs to become familiar with all the specific terminologies which the Shastrakaras have developed. So that's why we add a glossary to every Shastra. This means this, this means this, this means this. In this context, in the context of this Shastra. The same word can appear for chemistry, for physics, for mathematics, for grammar, but the word will have different connotation. One needs to become familiar with that. Then you have Uddesha, brief introduction, an overview or the summary of the key issues. Then you have Upama, analogy, explaining the unfamiliar, using familiar comparisons. Then it becomes easy to understand. Sometimes you have stories also to explain that. Metaphors, analogies are given to make the unfamiliar, using some familiar metaphors or analogies, explaining the unfamiliar words. Then in the part 2 also, like I give you few more examples of this. So you have ekanta, universal principles, statements true in all cases, without exception. So those rules are known as the universal rules, are known as ekanta. Then you have purva paksha, the prima facie, presenting the opponent's view or initial doubt to be addressed. पूर्व पक्ष. तो हम शास्त्र में बोलते हैं कि आपने पूर्व पक्ष किया है क्या? Have you done the literature review? Have you done the पूर्व पक्ष? Are you familiar with the whole thing that is already available? Then you have nirdesha, detailing, explaining a topic in detail, covering nuances. Then you have nirvachana, etymology, which is very, very important. That's why Nirukta becomes one of the Vedanta texts. Without a Nirukta, it's extremely difficult to understand the Veda. Even Niruktaka himself fails to explain many words, because the meanings of many, many words, root sounds, they lost, the context is lost, the root sounds are lost, the root senses are lost. Yet the Nirvachana has to be there. The Nirukta has to be there to explain a particular word. Suppose I am using, say, the word Agni. So what will the Nirukta of Agni? The Nirukta of Agni will be Angati urdhvam gacchati iti Agni. So this I need to explain so that the real meaning of Agni. So Agni means, like when you look at a flame, the flame always moves up, doesn't go down. So Angati urdhvam gacchati. Therefore the flame is called Agni. It comes from the root sound Ag. Ag means to move on. This nirvachan is necessary, and they have provided nirvachan of every word that they deal with in the thing. And that again is the responsibility of the bhashyakaras, the vrittikaras, the tikakaras. So in addition to the main text, we have the Vyakhyana granthas, Bhashya granthas, Tikka, Tippani. Okay. So one side you have the Mula grantha, then you have the Bhashya grantha. The same way you take like Panini Shashtadhyaya. So whatever Panini presented. So after 200, 300 years, Katyayana comes, and then he finds that there are so many things missing in Panini. Without disrespecting, paying highest regard to Panini, he adds many more sutras. So those additional sutras are known as Vartikas. So through the Vartikas, we understand Panini better. And all these Vartikas and sutras again you find in Panini's, Patanjali's Mahabhashya. Patanjali comes after 200 years of Katyayana or 300 years of Katyayana. So he writes a commentary on it. Without that commentary, Panini will not be understood. Katyayana will not be understood. So you have the Bhashya granthas, the Tikka, Tippani, and again you go to Patanjali's Mahabhashya, another example of very highly methodically, scientifically, systematically presented text. With logic, very logically he explains. I'll give you one example. Again, Patanjali's Mahabhashya. So, look at how he puts his argument. He makes a statement that there are sadhu shabdas and there are asadhu shabdas. This is the first statement he makes. That means there are sadhu shabdas, the proper right words, and there are asadhu shabdas which are not intended to be used in the language, but there are. Then the next statement he makes, the use of sadhu shabda yields dharma. Sadhu shabda brings you punya, dharma. Asadhu shabdas, they bring adharma. This is the next statement. Then the next statement is, in order to, because the question will come, how do I know what is sadhu and what is asadhu? How many sadhu shabdas? How many asadhu shabdas? So he said, in order to find out one sadhu shabda, one has to scan through many asadhu shabdas. You have to know, because see, the simple thing, what Sri Aurobindo writes in his epic poem Savitri, none can attain to heaven without passing through the hell. Okay? Or Bhartrihari says, asatya vartmani stitva tata satyam samina. You have to go through the asatya in order to find out the satya. So you have to scan through many asadhu shabdas in order to arrive at what is a sadhu shabda. So these statements when he makes, then as a disciple again he questions. What is the question that can come up from this statement? So the disciple, Patanjali himself, as a disciple asks himself, who is Guru? So he says that, stop, sir. You said that sadhu shabdas will give punya, dharma. Asadhu shabdas will give adharma. Now you are saying that there are so many asadhu shabdas, one has to scan through in order to find one sadhu shabda. Am I not yielding more adharma than dharma? Is it a logical question or not? Right? So the same question he posed. Beautiful argument in Patanjali's Mahabhashya. How the text is presented and what clarity they bring. He said, yes, very good question, but I am answering to it. He says, just think of a man who is digging a well. Digging well to find water. He says, by the time he reaches a point where little water oozes the bottom. So this is the first appearance of water. So there the Upakhanaka, the well digger, he stops. Because that is the place, and slowly the water will ooze and the well will get. He said, by the time he is there, he is completely full with water. But the little water which oozes from the bottom has the power to clean him completely. So you may be yielding so much of adharma by scanning through the sadhu sabdas, but one single sadhu sabda has so much of power to clear all the adharmas and then put you in the framework of dharma. So he uses many nyayas, maxims, upakhanana nyaya. That is also a part of our presenting the text. Different nyayas, different maxims are used to justify or to validate or to give a satisfactory answer, logical answer to it. That's also the maxim, the logika nyayas. Like in order to appreciate because many of the bhashyakaras, they use these nyayas, the maxims. So one has to become familiar with the maxims, the logika nyayas. It's amazing to read this logika nyayas. Okay? And huge amount of nyayas you will find, hundreds and thousands in number. And they're beautifully explained, right? So then you have nirvajana, you have yoga, consistency, ensuring logical order and consistency in argument. Inconsistency is something which was considered to be greatest defect. Wherever inconsistency is found, that will not be considered as a validated shastra. Okay. So one needs to maintain the consistency, which is known as the yoga. Then you have empirical, causal connection, emphasize all relevant causal factors for interpretation. So like this, you have got many about 30 principles known as Tantra Yukti. So tomorrow I will share one more text PDF which I have prepared the note based on which this PPT I prepared. Okay. So that has got all the Tantra Yuktis, all the references which will help you to understand what is Tantra Yukti. So you go through it, then on the last day when they ask questions, so this PDF, this class notes is going to help you. So then you have got another unwitching methods of debate. This also we need to know. I think we will conclude with this slide. Then you can ask questions if you have. So unwitching is another related field attributed to Metaphysics Gautama, focusing on critical inquiry. So we talked a lot about critical thinking. So the key theme is Samdhasa, Vada Degree, method of debate, components of structured debates. Again, you have Pratignya, where the proposition or the issue is being debated. Sthapana, establishing the proposition, reason, example, application, okay, conclusion. Then you have Pratisthapana, establishing the counter proposition. Hetu, the source of knowledge, perception, inference, tradition, comparison, okay, the rationale. Then you have Uttara, rejoinder or reply, right? You have Siddhanta, established truth, tenet, okay, via experts or reasoning. Then you have Sanshaya, doubt, uncertainty, often or starting point. So these are the points when your debate happens. This happens in this way. These are the things, and this is known as unwitching, right? So to conclude, ancient Indian scholars developed sophisticated methodologies for scientific discourses. Frameworks like Nyaya Mimamsa provided logical structures for arguments and problem presentation. Tantra Yuktis offered a rich toolkit for nuanced writing, interpretation, and structuring scientific texts. Techniques extended to formal debate methods and literature. And overall goal was to ensure logical rigor, clarity, comprehensive treatment, and scientific understanding of the subjects. introduction to Tantra Yukti. Of course, it's a very vast topic. I'll mention some of the texts specific to Tantra Yukti which are available on internet. You can download and if you are interested, you can read through it. Okay. So based on this, we can even have an Indian way of research methodology, and we can assimilate whatever is available to us today in the name of research methodology for various subjects. But we can also have this, the Animichik, what the Nayayikas say, what the Mimamsakas say, what the Shastrakaras say. But in the name of Tantra Yukti, all these can become the basis of framing of Indian research methodology. So this is what is all about today's class, and then you can ask questions. Or anything that you want to say.
Sir, I have one question. When Vedas were composed,
Silence. Class is now over. We have still half an hour. Now this time we are utilizing for question and discussion.
I request you all to please stop creating any additional noise so that discussion can happen. Okay? The class is not yet over. There is an important announcement about your exam as well, which I will make after the discussion is over. Okay, so please pay attention and at least let others who want to discuss do the discussion. Yeah, please.
sir, when Vedas were composed, were they composed in a same period of time or different period of time? And was Ved Vyas Rishi who wrote the Vedas, was a single Rishi, or it was a name given to that Padvi who write or composed that Vedas?
First thing, the correction you should make, Veda was never composed by him. Yeah. Veda is a revealed knowledge. That's what yesterday we discussed. Veda was revealed knowledge. To whom it reveals? It reveals to a Rishi. Who is a Rishi? The Rishi has to have the three components I said. What are those?
Drishti,
Drishti,
Shruti,
Shruti and
Vivek.
Viveka. These three. How a Rishi gets Drishti, Shruti and Viveka? By tapasya, right? Sadhana. Very good. So when someone attains to this Drishti, Shruti and Viveka by tapasya, by sadhana, so the truth reveals itself. One is in a position of seeing the truth directly. And when one sees the truth itself gets organized by itself in a rhythmic pattern with potent sounds. And the Rishi, without any distortion, whatever he sees in the form of a pattern of the sound, he brings it out without any distortion or allowing his mind to interpret or distort or further extend or do anything. That's why it is called the mantra. So it gets revealed. And there is no particular age when it gets revealed. Even Veda, you will be amazed to know, there was one Daivarata, Muni Daivarata, a young boy doing tapasya under the guidance of Vasishtha Ganpati Muni. So between 1915 to 1922, so that was the period. So when he was in deep contemplation, there was something which was coming to his lips. He is in a state of trance, but something is coming. No one understands that. But Ganapati Muni, being a very great tapasvi, so he could understand that new mantras are getting revealed. It has happened in the recent 100 years before. Okay, 150 years before, 100 years before, it's happening in front of so many. It's recorded. And all that was getting revealed, so Ganapati Muni noted down and declared to the whole world that these are the new mantras which have arrived, okay, which are manifesting, which are revealed to the crowd. So there is a book published by Bharati Vidyabhavan under the title Chando Darshanam. So where these new mantras revealed to Daivarata are on record, and Ganapati Muni also writes Bhashya on the mantras which are revealed to his own disciples. Okay, so the Veda mantra, there is no particular time age when the Veda was written. It must have revealed in so many ages, but they were available in the tradition. They were available in a scattered manner. Veda Vyasa. Till then, it is believed that it was Vedavasa alone who was there, employing his own disciples. Like he employed Paila, Vaishampayana, and other disciples of him, Sumantu. So each disciple he gave the responsibility of one Veda, right? So Rigveda Samhita was by one disciple, another. So using his own disciples as his research associate or co-editor or co-compiler, so he did this work. Vyasa. It was not many because it's on record like Veda Vyasa with his 4 disciples worked out the compilation of all the 4 Vedas.
So, in other words, knowledge like the Vedas continues to be generated.
Absolutely.
And are there any, I don't know the exact word, but regulatory bodies, just like when you
No.
present
There's
how
no
do you know
regulatory body.
how is this codified? Like here we've been able to decode it to an extent. How do you know whether this is genuine or it is mumbo jumbo?
No, that is why the whole techniques are employed, like you put it into this framework.
But they may not be applicable to these sound patterns. That's what I'm not.
So only the confirmation can be said, for example, like whether the mantras which appeared to or revealed to Daivarata, whether they were genuine or not, only Ganapati Muni can confirm. Another Rishi can confirm.
But he himself did not ascend to those levels that he could generate.
No, he is not in that state where he could generate.
So would
It's
he
just
have?
he is in a state of trance, and this was seen by so many people sitting around silently and then seeing this whole event happen.
And there is an interpretation to it.
Yes, interpretation of Ganapati Muni himself has. So that is why the Veda is very clear about it. Only a Rishi can understand another Rishi, can confirm the words of another Rishi. That's very clearly stated in the Veda. So in order to understand what the Veda says, what a Rishi says, one has to raise oneself to the level of the Rishi.
But in this world of AI and so much happening, how do you know this is
But it
something
is up to
authentic?
you. The choice is left to us. Whatever the world may be happening, if I decide to raise myself to become a Rishi, it's up to me. The world will not stop me being a Rishi. It all depends upon your choice, your intensity, your aspiration, your sincerity, your purity. It's left to every individual choice.
So is the notion of a rishi living in the cave still on?
Yes,
Or
it's
you
not
can be
necessary
in the-
that one has to live in the cave.
You can be in the
You
middle
know
of-
the story of Nisargadatta Maharaj, right? Who wrote this Who Am I or Who I Am, that book, famous book. Nisargadatta Maharaj ji, he had his own BD company in Mumbai. He was a spiritualized, highly realized soul. So he went, he did tapasya under this guru in Himalaya. When he attained to a particular level, so he asked his guru, now what? He said, now what means you have to go back. You have to run your business. You have to be in the world. Because it doesn't mean that you have got siddhi and then you have to remain confined into the cave. It's of no use. So that's how he comes back to the world, participates in the world. Most of the rishis, they participated in the world. Yajnavalkya participated in the world. Vasishtha participated in the world. They ruled over the kingdoms. They were the true rulers, true guides of the society.
Right.
Not the kings, not the monarchs.
Without that, they couldn't have been.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was the
You have to have Samartha Ramadas behind Shiva. You have to have a Vasishtha Vishwamitra behind Rama. You have to have a Sandipani behind Krishna. Or a Ghora Rishi behind Krishna.
What would mean the Tantra?
Tantra Yukti means like a logical development.
But in न्याय Shastra and the न्याय Shastra, the 5 steps to prove a hypothesis, and then Vinyasa, the 7 principles. So So, like tangibility is like when two knowledgeable
Tantra means here is the technique. A technique for a logical development of any shastra. That is what it means by Tantra.
So when Shastras between two knowledgeable persons, so there is one.
They follow this. They follow this administrative, this principles.
So Tantra Yukti plays a role there.
Tantra Yukti is more for the Shastra, but for Shastras they follow the administrative, the Tibetan principles what I read out. Like,
And you said that Rishi has Drishti, Vivek and Shruti, and because of tapasya. So if I am not doing tapasya, I don't have Drishti.
no,
I don't have.
you may be having Drishti some, but it is not the Rishi Drishti. We all have Drishti, but it is not Rishi Drishti. Rishi Drishti is a transcendental vision, a Kranta Drishti. What one cannot see, he sees.
So there are many mentions of in the English, but in the later text it disappears. Why?
See, there are so many deities in the Veda. They take different forms in other later literature. So, but it is not that they're completely disappearing. They're there in different
It
forms.
becomes a
Yes.
less negative, more
Not
negative.
negative, but it was needed maybe, like a particular society, a particular age needed it in different forms. But symbolism remains intact. So if you understand the Vedic symbolism, then that is why, like Sri Aurobindo, when he entered into the Veda, he said that many of the Puranic characters, events, become very clear after I entered into the Veda. Otherwise they didn't mean anything. Because the Veda provided the true symbolism. The symbolism remains intact. But in the outer circumstances you find, event-wise or the text-wise, they take different forms. But symbolizing that original sense which is there in the Veda. So, any question from this side? Here.
So Samvad is basically two people, one question answer kind of a thing.
What?
Samvad, if you say that
Samvad.
Samvad is a question answer kind of thing. So is there any such instance of the group discussion kind of if there
Yeah,
is-
assemblies happen. There are so many examples of assemblies which happened in the Jana.
Okay.
They were called the Brahma Sabhas.
Sabha, okay, Sabha.
In the assembly, this group discussion.
Group discussion can
Yes.
happen.
Talked a lot about the research process today, and very beautifully you also shared about the intention of research. It's very important, and how it appreciates the roots to like be very true to the intention while starting the research process. Can you share more about how to differentiate it from the current research process and how particularly the aspect of you talked about Panaya. How would you differentiate it from the current research process? And in your own journey and your own research journey, when you were doing research, and I'm sure you will be currently also continuing to do research, what is something that you try to apply from that?
Yeah, see, for most of my research, I apply these principles, and mostly I get into the intuitive. Like we're going to talk about intuition day after tomorrow. Tomorrow I will be discussing about another pedagogical tools called Avadhana. So tomorrow's discussion will be there. But I use more of the intuitive thought. That comes again through the process of meditation and contemplation. Say for example, like I do a kind of Shabda Sadhana, where the meanings of many words, various meanings, so they reveal, they get revealed in meditation, in contemplation, in silence, or while I am reading some text. Then I prepare small notes. Recently I am running a course called Sanskrit Untranslatable. So where I share those words. So whatever meanings are revealed based on that, then I verify with the grammar, with the nirukta, with the tradition. the appearance of that word in various contexts in the Shastras, then I present it. Like if you want to understand, say for example, Shraddha, Sankalpa, Vinaya, Dharma, Harita, Brihad, Ananda, so many words, key words of Sanatana. Without understanding the deeper meanings of these words, you cannot have the right entry into the Vedas, or if you have the entry also, it's not going to make any sense. So that is where, like for last 20 years, I have been doing this of the sadhana. But I want to touch the core vibration of each word, the key words especially. So then the Veda is understood, the Vedanta is understood, the Shastras are understood in their right sense, true sense, or pure sense. So the power of intuition helps me a lot. I don't get more into this logical presentation of many things. So the intuitive presentation, the logic comes later. So I tell you that if you look at all the texts, everything was intuitively discovered and logically presented. This is not this technique. You go to Ayurveda, say for example, you find more than 700-800 plants, their properties. I'm asking you this question because today with all the sophisticated empirical facilities, labs, minds, and research techniques, so if you have to find out the property of a single plant, I'm giving you a proposal. I'm asking you to write a proposal of finding out the property of a plant. So what will be the estimate, the budget for this proposal? How many people are going to be involved? What are the methodologies you are going to employ? What methods you are going to have? Okay. So what tools are you going to use? How many, which lab, where? In order to find out the properties of a plant. Just imagine what it would demand. And there are many people in the medical science, a lot of things are happening this kind of research. But just imagine so many thousands of years before, when you had no empirical facilities, as people say, or like I said, they were highly empirical. Okay. There are so many examples that you can bring. So how did Charaka, Sushruta, Bhagavata, Dhanvantari, or Kashyapa, or many Ayurveda acharyas, they could find out the exact properties of a plant. So for example, Guruji. The Guruji means those, what you call Giloy. So it has 15 different properties. Okay. So how did they discover these 15 different properties which works even today? And based on those properties you have the medicines. Okay. How did they discover? Whether they did lab experiment? What kind of lab facilities were available? Even today also, like you go this Navaramte with him, Acharya Balakrishna. He is discovering properties of thousands of plants. Is he bringing the plant to the lab or he is discovering it in a different way? But at the same time, after discovering the properties, how they have presented, if you look at the Materia Medica in the Ayurveda, very logical. So it was intuitively discovered. So discovering by intuition and developing by logic, this was the principle of writing a presenting of Shastras.
But you were saying that intuition can be wrong, but experiment cannot be wrong. Like if I perform an experiment.
Intuition can be misunderstood, not that intuition will be wrong. It all depends upon in what state of mind you are. When intuitively you are discovering something, like you are holding on to it and then you are not misinterpreting. That all depends upon in what state of mind you are. That's why purity in mind, the chitta suddhi, manas suddhi, buddhi suddhi, the linking of mind with the pure intellect, all these things are within it. And that is why the tapasya and sadhana is in it. So each scientist, each Ayurveda acharya was a tapasvi, was a sadhana, was a rishi. The basic discipline, no one debated on. So that discipline is again missing in our life, in our education.
Is intuition, does it need a foundation of intellect or only purity of intellect? They are two.
Purity of intellect, if it is there, so when the intuitive flashes take place, it will not miss it. So one has that Viveka Shakti, the discerning power, okay, for the execution of that in the right way. So one will not be missing it. So if there is so much of impurity at the mental and intellectual level, that even though intuitive flashes take place, so there is a great chance of being missing. That is where the Chitta Shuddhi, Buddhi Shuddhi is necessary. The discipline is necessary. There's a whole lot of preparation which is needed in order to be truly, discovering something intuitive, or to develop that intuitive mind. Okay.
Okay, so I understand these are difficult classes, evening times, more than 2 hours, all of that. And sorry for putting you through this difficulty. The intention is not to harass you in, in wildest imagination. But there are two things. One is you signed up for it, right? When the eVeEeVe was circulated, all these times were given, including the fact that the first class would be longer and the others would be 2.5 to 2 hours. The time was given, everything was given. Right? The other thing is, see, we also need to work with experts who are not available at IIT, and we need to look at their schedules. Right? And as a result, that may not always align with what is convenient for us. Right? So I think we need to take that, take all of this in that sense. The second thing is about your exams and all. I need to make some announcement, which I will do at the end, so that I have your attention right until the very end. Right? If I talk about the exam, I think most of the attention will be gone the moment I talk about it. Right? So we'll keep that for the end. Throughout whatever we see in the last class, this class, and the next two classes, there are two sort of broad points that I want you to remember and understand. And one is, if, to my mind, and I can be wrong, and you can disagree with me on that, but to my mind, it is very, very natural for anybody who claims to have some curiosity, which is the first step towards becoming a scientist and engineer, right? To want to know what kind of things have been discovered, invented, uncovered, thought of, analyzed, synthesized in the place which they claim to be home. Right? So what kind of ideas, what kind of thought frameworks have been discovered and have been, brought forth, presented, developed in this lab? Just to know, no other purpose, only to know. I think that itself is, is worth pursuing. Much of what we today call knowledge, including specific subjects in social sciences, in humanities, in science, in engineering, all of that, essentially starts from that kind of curiosity. Even AI started from that kind of curiosity for somebody, and then it developed. And so that curiosity is important, and if you're curious, to my mind, if you are a little perceptive, if you're not totally bogged down by this device in your pocket or your hand, then you will have that curiosity. The attempt in this course is to satisfy that curiosity, right? So think about it. For some people, it might also give them some notion of confidence and pride, right? That some of these thinking frameworks, some methods of doing stuff have also been discovered in some other parts of the world which are beyond what is called the North Atlantic today, the US, the Western Europe, right? Parts of Europe, etc. So there are other parts of the world also that have done some very transformative things. If that evokes a certain sense of pride and some confidence within you, well, great. That's one more part of the objective served as a result of trying to satisfy the curiosity. That's point number one. Point number two, in this limited course, which is just one credit, right, you may not be able to understand everything that's being talked about in full detail. That may not happen. Nobody is expecting that. Right? And even the exam will not expect that. So you should not be worrying about it. If you were to take it from me, what should definitely happen at the end of this course is you at least remember some of these terms. And so you should remember that there is something called Nyaya Shastra, which is different from Nyaya as in justice. Right? There is something called Mimamsa, there is something called Tantra Yukti, and these things bring with them certain ways of thinking, certain ways of analyzing, certain ways of projecting, right? Even if you are able to do as much as that at the right time in your lives, when you're looking for different ways to do things, I think you will be able to come back to it. And the problem with some of us who have grown up, much before you, is that we did not even hear of these words while growing up. Right? So as a college student, these words never came to my mind, never came to my attention, ever. And now I know specific ways in which these can be very useful, not just for college students like you, and I can discuss in detail with whoever is interested separately, how this can be useful for you while you try to do your undergraduate in IIT or postgraduate, whatever, but also at the school level. And so I have, that all has come now at this stage only because these words never came to us at the right time. So if nothing else, at least remember these terms. Okay, they will be helpful. And I'm talking here not as a professor, but as somebody who's your BTech senior, as I always like to tell students, right? I've also done my BTech from similar IIT, etc. So take it from that, in that spirit, right, as a senior. But that is not the all end all. So at least remembering is one. But then what use is all of this beyond remembering and beyond knowing that some of these things can result in certain logical structures, logical methodology, right? So my take on that is, see, imagine if you, I don't know how many of you are fond of history, but you go back to the history 500 years before, 400 years before in Europe. Many of the scientific, quote-unquote, scientific ideas that we see as the basis for whatever we do today in science and technology, engineering, arose in that kind of Europe. But before that, Europe, went into what are called dark ages. Many ideas that were developed in what is called the classical age, right? The Greeks, right? Aristotle, like Plato, Socrates in philosophy. All of these ideas were actually lost to Europe for a long, long time. They brought it back by trying to study the classics. Right? They started with that, and then of course they developed it much, much further. Okay? I think for some of us at least, some of this knowledge can possibly play that role. You will be able to come up with something that is very, very different, from a very, very different trajectory, and therefore some completely new knowledge, and hence new technology. Maybe new science, maybe new products, maybe startups also. Right? But for that, you will really have to think that something different can be done. You will have to probably discover how the same thing, right, same logic, same thinking methods which we are used to today can also be done in a different way. I'll tell you how this difference leads to some very transformative thinking. If scientists, there's examples from physics, right, because all of us have studied it. If scientists were only to think of the ways in which Newton used to think of things, we would never have quantum mechanics and relativity, right? For Einstein to even imagine, first one has to conceptualize, the formula that has a 1 minus v squared by c squared square root in the denominator. That comes later. Einstein would probably first have to imagine that the mass of a body, forget the weight, can also change. The length of a body can also change. Right? These are all relative things, depends on what frame we are looking at, etc. This does not come from any deductive kind of framework. Like you have a principle, you try to apply it, and then you get it. There was some other source of knowledge, source of thinking that probably some of these scientists were trying to tap into. They might have tapped into it by accident, they might have tapped into it because they were trying to look for something very, very new. Either of those could have happened. But the point is, they first thought of it in a different way, and then they developed it further. So in the spirit of what Professor Sampadanand Mishra just described, there was some intuitive thinking first, and then there was a logical way to develop it. Okay? So if you really want some transformative things to come, some very, very different things to come, one needs to look at things differently. One needs to approach the same kind of topics and subjects very, very differently. If some of you really have it in you, to do something that will stay in the world beyond you live, right, for the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 generations, you will need to think of it very, very differently. And this is your challenge. Whatever you will see in the next couple of classes might give you the motivation and maybe a seed, maybe a starting point to start thinking fundamentally from a very, very different way. Right? So also, if you want to go all that way beyond only remembering some of these terms, that field is open field. Right? You now have the opportunity to do what Europe did 500 years ago. This generation has their opportunity. If you want to take it, you should take it. If you don't, we can always live happily the way we are living right now, and I have nothing against it. Everybody should do whatever they are made to do, but there is an opportunity for those of you who have that itch, who have that curiosity, who have that motivation to take things forward. What will come now? So today, yesterday's class was about just broadly introducing that there is something called a knowledge system which is different from the knowledge system that we talked about today. That is what the IKS bit was. Today we got into logic, right? Some very brief description with that. Tomorrow we will get into what Professor Mishra described as Avadhana Kala. So that is one way among multiple ways in our corpus of knowledge to enhance concentration. Okay? The day after that, Professor Mishra will launch into what he referred to as intuition. Okay? So 3 classes, 3 ways, 3 aspects, 3 dimensions. Right? The 4th day will be a synthesis of all of this. Okay? So there will be how all of this sort of connects with each other and how this can be used. Discussion on that. That may not be a lecture as much as a discussion. Discussion on how all of this that can be used for our pedagogical frameworks today. How do we use that in schools, in colleges, and whatever else we want to do today, right? So, through a synthesis of the first 3 classes that we talked about. Your quiz will be at the end of this all. Right? The last hour of the course will be a quiz. It will be an online quiz. It will be MCQ. It will not require you to memorize each and every word that's being talked about. It will be mostly application. Right? And therefore, you also have to pay attention. If you are sitting here with earpods and maybe making your designs and creating your videos and drafting your music and all of that, it's perfectly fine. I have no issues with that. But please remember that the quiz will be entirely based on what is being talked about here. Right? So whatever you score will be directly proportional. There might be a power also actually to how much attention you are able to put in here. Okay? So please pay attention, and your attention will only be enhanced if you can even participate and ask the right questions that will help you in absorbing whatever is being talked about here. These slides will not be shared. Okay? If you're imagining that suddenly these slides will be shared, that will not happen. So whatever is happening is only happening here. Alright? So please use that time. But like I said, this is not a memory testing kind of a thing. It will be MCQ. It will be online. You will be sitting in this very room. And while I'm extremely good friends with many of my students, some of them are here, right? Some of them have also become professors here. I am extremely strict when it comes to copying in exams. So the moment I find anybody, the exam will most likely be on Moodle. Most likely, but it is still trying to figure out, the tech is still not worked out. You should get a message. I think tomorrow, just try to check tomorrow evening after this class if you can log into Moodle and find yourself in this course on Moodle. Okay, please check. If that doesn't happen, you will figure out another way to do it. But no matter what the way is, okay, and I'm saying this with a smile, Because if I find you cheating, you'll be immediately out. Entire exam will just be a 0. Outright. Right? No excuses, no nothing. But the moment you step out of the class, you'll be my friend. Very good friend. Yes, I'll make that distinction. But make sure that there is no cheating at all, for which you really need to make sure that you're paying attention in whatever is happening. Otherwise, it might be difficult for you. It is a graded course also. It's not just a pass-fail course. So you will get your respective grades. As announced already, your usual attendance rules, less than 75%, 1 grade down, all of that will happen. And if the grade happens to be D, then this will actually convert to E or F, depending on whatever the rules are. Right? All those standard grading principles that we follow at IIT will all be followed here. Okay? So please keep all of this in mind. Take this course in that spirit. Some of you might have registered for the next course also, which starts on 20th April. It will also follow similar kind of ideas and principles. I hope you have a wonderful time in the remaining 2 days of this course and the next course whenever it happens. Okay? Sorry for keeping you too late. Your dinner is still waiting for you. It is not yet ended. Yes, please. So those PDFs will be shared. Yes, yeah, they will be shared. But you know, if you have to do well in the exam, you will be better placed if you are paying attention. Only those PDFs will not make sense. If you have not signed the attendance sheet, please do that. All of you know this, I don't need to say this. Your sign here is the only way of knowing attendance.